This here is another viewer's broken gaming PC, and apparently this one powers up, the fans spin, the LEDs light up, but we get no picture out, and that's kind of sort of a huge problem because without picture out, this thing's just one large paperweight. We're gonna try to fix it for this viewer in this video. Stay with me. Fellas, listen up. Did you know that 2 out of every 3 men will experience some form of hair loss by the age of 35? Yeah. You heard that right, 35. And some assume it's just a fact of life, right? What can I do? It's genetics, it's stress, what have you. But there are things you can be doing now to prevent it. In comes Keeps. A licensed doctor with Keeps will review your information online and recommend the right hair loss treatment plan. From there, your medications are shipped right to your door every 3 months, and you'll have 24/7 access to your Keeps doctor for any questions you might have. Keeps is the more affordable solution for hair loss and pattern baldness because they're able to offer generic versions of FDA-approved medications. And while it may take upwards of 4 to 6 months to see results, those that have are so glad they started when they did. Because the best way to prevent hair loss is to do something about it while you still have hair left. So don't wait. Visit keeps.com/Greg Salazar. Again, that's KEEPS.com/ this YouTube channel's name, or click the top link in this video's description to save 50% off your first Keeps order. Hey there, and welcome to Fix or Flop. In this playlist, we attempt to fix viewer systems in and around the Orlando, Florida area for free. That's right, $0 and 0 cents. Now, there are a couple of caveats. Of course, the first is that I can't technically guarantee that your system will be fixed when I return it to you. It comes with the territory. We've had a pretty good track record so far on this playlist, but you never really know. The second caveat is that you have to be okay with me filming this process with your rig. It takes a few days, usually I'd say like 3 to 4 days, and most folks are okay with that because again, the service is free. And of course, I can monetize these videos on sites like YouTube. That's where I make the bulk of my money, so I don't offload any of that cost to the viewer, who again is already gracious enough to loan us his or her system. Now this system is, it's a curious one because when you just, you take a quick glance at it, you would think that it's, okay, low to mid-range, right? It's got a 1660 Super in here, which is pretty cool. And it's got an Intel stock cooler over a pretty modern looking motherboard, mismatched DDR4, but that's not a huge issue. But then when I read the spec sheet, I asked for this twice because I wasn't sure if it was a typo or not. Apparently in this build is an Intel Core i7 12700K. Yeah, you're thinking what I'm thinking, with the stock cooler. And this isn't even the correct stock cooler for this generation of CPU, mind you. I'm pretty sure this came from a 9th gen platform, which was what was previously in here. So when he upgraded to Alder Lake, he just migrated the cooler. And there are a few problems with that. Most notably, I don't think this cooler can keep up with how much heat this CPU's putting out. I mean, at 12700K, for crying out loud, like, you need at least a 240mm AIO, a pretty decent air tower cooler, in my experience, with most 12700Ks. I've actually been testing, I have a 12900K in my system now, a 12600K. Even the 12600K runs a bit hot, and you do need something aftermarket, in my opinion, to cool this. A stock cooler is just not going to cut it. And so unless he won the silicon lottery, I think part of the issue here might be that his CPU was just running way too hot for way too long. Again, I said he's got a 1660 Super in here, 32 gigs of mismatched DDR4, a Z690P D4 Asus Prime motherboard, and a Prestige 80 Plus Gold power supply from Apevia. I can maybe see the case where like a viewer might think that just because it's a Core i5, even though it has a K in the name, it's, you might be able to get away with the stock cooler. But in 2022, any Core i7, especially a K SKU, should not be using a cooler this tiny and pathetic. These Intel stock coolers, I mean, they're garbage. They really are. They're not good for anything other than maybe like base Core i3 and locked Core i5 builds, and that's if you're on a very, very tight budget. So I think I have an upgrade for him. It's not going to be the beefiest cooler in the world, but it should be leaps and bounds better than what he currently has in here. Otherwise, cable management seems to be pretty good. This doesn't look like this person's first build. The case seems fairly clean. I'll check cable management behind the motherboard tray once we're through this, but obviously the elephant in the room, the fact that the system doesn't work. So with all that out of the way, let's get to the troubleshooting process, starting first with attempting to power the system on and replicating the issue described by the owner. Remember, here again, it is just a no picture out scenario. So the system should light up, the fans should spin, at least some of them, but we shouldn't get any signal to our monitor. So let's get this thing fired up. Power on at the rear, and the power button, I think, is dead center. So as described so far, the system does power on. Fans are working, LEDs are on, but I don't see a picture out. Do we have a Dr. Debug LED on this board? Of course we don't. Of course we don't. It just makes our job that much more difficult. Graphics card fans are spinning, so there's that. I want to connect a speaker and see if we get any beats. That's weird. No sound at all from the speaker. Okay. So because we don't get a sound from the speaker, I'm going to focus a bit more here on the card. I swapped out the HDMI connection with a DisplayPort connection from the 1660 Super. We still got no signal, so that tells me that it's probably not a bad HDMI port, something I just wanted to rule out up front. What I'm going to do next is swap this card for one that we know works. In comes the GT710. For those who haven't seen earlier episodes in this playlist, this thing's an absolute champ. It definitely saves the day on more than one occasion, because it doesn't require a supplemental PCIe power connection. It just slots in, connected to your monitor, and you'll get picture out more than likely. We know that this card works, of course, and that's why we're going to swap it with the 1660 Super in the build. It would be so very unfortunate if this card was to blame for the no post issue. I don't have a replacement 1660 Super on hand. In fact, most of the boxes that many of you like to point out in my closet are empty. So I'm in the same boat as most of you. Companies don't like sending graphics cards, and I can understand why. They're a scarce resource right now. Gonna disconnect that, it was a bit jarring. And we'll slot in our trusty 710. Will this work? Nah, I don't think so, but just want to get it out of the way up front so that we don't need to deal with graphics card swapping anymore. Same issue. It's not doing anything. So I guess I'm slightly relieved there, but I'm also, I've got this sneaking suspicion that it might be a dead CPU. And that does suck because this is almost a brand new chip. It's a 12700K. These things just came out. Why is this one already crapping the bed? Does it have anything to do with the fact that he's using a stock older Intel cooler? Probably. Now we mustn't get ahead of ourselves. I want to be consistent here. I don't want to just swap the CPU outright because I think that's what's wrong. I do badly want to swap it, but I'm gonna kind of restrain myself a bit because we do need to check a couple more things that I recommend you check as well if your PC refuses to post. The first thing we're gonna do is clear the CMOS. I'll show you how to do that in a second. The second thing we're gonna do is check the RAM seating. We're gonna make sure that all of those modules are properly slotted in. An improperly seated DIMM can cause what we're seeing here. And then if those two things don't work, one more thing I might try before swapping the chip is disconnect all of these smaller connections here. These are non-vital. The only ones that we really need at this point are the 24-pin and the 8-pin EPS up top. First things first, we'll make sure the system is powered off. This motherboard, as far as I can tell, doesn't have a dedicated button for clearing the CMOS. Instead, we get 2 pins here at the bottom, the old-fashioned way, CLRTC. You might see CLR, CMOS, clear CMOS. We're gonna jump these 2 pins with our screwdriver. We're just gonna hold it here for a good 15 to 20 seconds or so. Now will this work? I don't think so, but again, we have to check because it's so easy to do. It just kind of gets rid of that doubt in the back of the mind. Yeah, no picture out. Okay, so next thing we're going to check DDR4. I'm going to do that right now. Everything looks to be good. Yep, all RAM is seated properly. We could also just try booting things with a single DIMM installed. Let's do that now. I'm gonna use one of my DIMMs that I know works. We're gonna slot it into A2, which should be the first slot to populate. And we're gonna power back on here. Again, just to rule out another simple fix. We're gonna be kicking ourselves in the teeth if all it came down to was memory, right? It's a very quick swap. But still nothing. Again, I'm not really surprised. I am aiming for that CPU. I just want to swap that chip out. I've got a few other Alder Lake chips to throw into here, and we'll see. It's looking like he nuked his chip with that stock cooler. I don't think the failure rates in Alder Lake are all that high. I've been using one for a good while. Haven't heard too many reports out of the gate, so it doesn't seem like a QC issue. Although you could have just gotten a bad chip. It happens. It is very rare though, especially earlier in the product's life cycle. So now again, what we've done is disconnect everything non-vital with the exception of the 24-pin, which obviously is vital, and the 8-pin EPS up top, which powers the CPU directly. We'll need to jump the pins here because we disconnected the cable, and yeah, still nothing. So now we're in hardware mode. I'm gonna be removing this cooler, which it's connected up top here. There we go. This wasn't even bolted down. This one is, but this one It doesn't feel like it's locked in at all, which is a problem. Yeah, you're not getting proper distribution of mounting pressure, and yeah, you'll get pretty bad performance that way. Look at the, just another reason why you don't want to do this. You've got large chunks of this IHS that aren't being touched at all by either the cold plate or the thermal paste, and that's no bueno. And we're gonna check the underside of the CPU, and we're also gonna check the socket. Ooh. I think I know what's wrong. I think his CPU is fine. I see some bent pins in that socket. Not entirely sure how well this is going to be picked up by the camera, but there are some bent pins along the back side of the socket here, and they're kind of spread out a bit. It's a bit strange how this happened because, I mean, even if you just like drop the CPU in pretty rough, usually you'll damage the pins along the edges of the socket, not these random ones here toward the middle. So I'm gonna try my best to fix these. We'll have to pull the motherboard out though because I don't feel comfortable working with it in the case. I don't have the correct angle of approach with it in the case. Now thankfully it doesn't look like any of these pins are missing. That would be a total SOL. I think I can fix this. You might as well try because otherwise this board is just bricked. Now what I personally like to use to fix these LGA sockets is a sewing needle. These have very fine points, of course. They're very sharp, be careful, but they're fine enough to where you can get under these smaller little contact pins in the socket. I'm gonna try my best here. I can see where a few of them are bent. One of them is really bent out of shape, and I think that's what's causing the no post issue. It just doesn't see the CPU fully because there are pins that aren't making contact. So we've got to be very careful here. I've never actually done this with an LGA 1700 socket before, and there's a lot of fine points in here. Okay, I'm trying to bend this one back. Gotta be really careful not to snap the pin. If you bend it too hard, too fast. Oh, that was close. Okay, that one looks better. I'm not sure how this happened. Possible something may have just fallen on it while the socket was exposed, and that's just another reason to be super careful around these. Now I think that might do it. There might be one other pin that's slightly out, but I kind of want to try it as is because if I go any harder in the paint here, I might end up snapping a pin, and of course that's worst case scenario. The board's bricked at that point, so yeah, I kind of want to try this. So here's the finished product. Again, you can obviously see at the bottom left-hand side of the socket where those pins are still slightly misaligned, but I think this is good enough. It's definitely better than it was when we pulled it out of the case. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of situate this in the case again. We'll wire things up, and hopefully we'll get a post this time. And just so we're on the same page before we kick this off, the underside of the CPU looks mighty fine. So we've got primary stuff reconnected. I'm going to go ahead and flip the switch here and the power supply, and we'll need to jump the two, pardon my really shoddy camera work there. I'm gonna jump the two pins for power. Hoping we get a picture this time. It would be pretty sweet. Come on. Come on. Dang, I even tried wiring the HDMI cable directly into the motherboard to use the CPU's integrated graphics. I forgot that these chips had integrated graphics because I'm so used to Ryzen. I'm not sure why I didn't think of this sooner, but still nothing, still no picture. I don't know. I mean, I thought I fixed those pins. I mean, they look pretty darn good. I would have put my seal of approval on them, but maybe they're just too recessed and I need to pull them up or something. Who really knows? Now I've spent a good minute trying to rework these pins yet again. I'm determined to get this right. And this looks pretty much stock now. I mean, I was pretty good before, but now this is, you're not gonna get much better than this without machining it. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I'm just objectively looking at this. I would be more than happy to move forward with this. I wouldn't expect there to be any issues at all. So unless there's improper contact on the underside of the pin with the board in the socket, this should work. So we're gonna try this now outside of the case just because I'm kind of tired of doing this. If at this point it doesn't work, what I'll do is swap motherboards because I don't expect anything is inherently wrong with his brand new virtually Core i7. So here we go. Yes, this all looks a bit jank. I'm lazy. I don't want to put the motherboard back in only to find out that it doesn't work and then remove it a third time. It gets very old after a short while. I hope this works. I'm not getting anything. Wait. Did it just power cycle? Oh, yes. Yes. Okay, I am so happy about that. Wow. Okay. That's awesome. I'm super elated now. Usually, you end up just replacing boards in these scenarios, but reworking pins in an LGA socket, let me tell you, friends, it is a pain in the butt. If you've done it before, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and the risk of breaking a pin is fairly high, so you want to be very, very careful. It looks like whatever we did the second time around did finally fix it, and that's terrific news. So coming off a high there, that was really exciting. We are in day 2 now, and I want to do the next logical thing in this process, and that is swap out the cooler. This stock cooler from a couple generations ago does not belong over a 12700K. It's a bit ridiculous. So I'm hoping that when we swap out that cooler for this one, courtesy of MSI, we don't end up, you know, screwing up the socket or the pins or anything where the mounting pressure can affect the contact with the pins. I just, you know, it's not the cooler's fault. It's going to be the socket's fault if it happens. But this Core Liquid S360 from MSI is a beast. It's a 360 millimeter all-in-one liquid cooler. It has a fan over the block for active VRM cooling, which is really nice. It also has an integrated display, so you can have it pretty much show whatever you want, temperatures, you want to put a crazy image on there, what have you. It's fully customizable. That's what I really like about this thing. And another thing, this is natively compatible with Intel's LGA 1700 sockets. You don't have to worry about whether or not it'll fit the latest and greatest. It says it right there on the box. We're going to be good to go here. Just look at how puny this thing is. It is definitely not doing the Core i7 justice. I understand why the viewer did this. Again, it looks like he just migrated it from his older Intel platform just to save cost effectively, but it's effectively cutting off this Core i7 at its knees, and it's a bit of a shame to see it there. So that's again why I want to upgrade. I'm very grateful that MSI is willing to support us in this one, and I think that, you know, what you're going to see from this is kind of threefold. First off, your core temperatures will drop dramatically, and as a result of that, your CPU will last a lot longer. That's something I can't really prove on paper, but theoretically, if the chip is running a bit cooler, it should last longer. And we're also going to get much quieter operation because the fans don't need to spin as hard to displace more heat, because a lot of it's already being absorbed by the radiator and kind of just passively convecting to atmosphere. Of course, the fans help that tremendously, but you don't need to be running them at 100% RPM if you're not doing insane overclocking or anything. I am moving around a few standoffs. This board doesn't take up the full 9 that typical ATX does. It's slightly narrower, so we've got these extra ones just kind of hanging here, and actually he had blanks where you would need standoffs to get this board situated properly. So I'm going to move these around just before we get the motherboard in here. I think actually he's only going to need 5 plus the center one, which is included in the case, and then we can go ahead and get this situated. The stock cooler is obviously removed at this point, and we'll work on getting the AIO mounting hardware installed from the rear once this is tightened down. I mean, it's not terrible, except for this rat's nest down here, which you really can't do too much about. I did need to get back here though, because I want to reroute some of these smaller cables coming through cutouts in the case that really don't make sense for me. These front I/O cables need to go somewhere over here. There should be a cutout. Yeah, right here. Now I moved some things around. As you can see, its SSD is now right beside his power supply. It's not an issue that this isn't like mounted to a little tray. These things have no moving parts. We'll just use some double-sided tape and make sure it stays right next to the PSU. I had no choice really, because we had this rat's nest that was in front of this tray, and this is where our radiator needs to go, the 360 AIO from MSI. So I moved this SSD over there, cleaned up cables just a bit, kind of changed where things were routed, and I think it looks cleaner now. It's not perfect. I didn't really spend too much time with this, but again, the main issue was just getting this to work. And it wasn't like it was completely trashed back here. So now we can get the AIO installed, and then we'll attempt to power this thing on. Hopefully it still works at the end of this. Now, Core Liquid S360 installation is pretty straightforward, especially for Intel. Just use this bracket and these included standoffs. And with some thermal paste applied, we'll get this block installed. I've removed the cover for the block, so it looks a bit weird right now. So we'll situate that there and then get these thumb screws on. It's kind of awkward doing it standing up, again, for the sake of the video. And there we are. Now we just got to route these cables, and we can get this cover installed. Let's see, it just clips right in. And I think we are just about finished. Cable management looks pretty tight on this side. We cleaned up things just a tad behind the motherboard tray as well, and everything's wired up. I think it's time to fire it on. I'm gonna be crossing everything I got in hopes that that socket is still intact. Let's wire things back up. HDMI cable back into the graphics card. This is his card again, not my GT710. I put his RAM back in here as well. Literally, his system is as is, ready to go. At least it should be. And we're gonna go ahead and power it on. Oh, there we go. Sorry, it's slightly delayed. All right, looking for a post. Come on, give me a post. Let's go. Post. Post. Come on, come on. Come on. Yes, it works. My brother's on the phone. It still works. That's awesome. Alrighty. I won't lie, I'm a bit shocked. I was expecting it either to be something super simple or just, you know, a brick component, a brick CPU or a brick graphics card, which is why initially we started investigating the card, because that's kind of what it looked like was happening. This just goes to show you that even having a few bent pins can result in a no post. The system will still turn on, right? A CPU is kind of sort of still detected, so it does try to post, but when you get that no signal, it's just, you know, it could be a plethora of things. And that's another reason why I love this series, because you never really know what you're gonna get. Even though the symptoms, you know, it seems to be the same one over and over, it could be totally different solutions to fix the same problem. So with that, I hope you've enjoyed watching this one play out. This one was especially interesting because I was led to believe it was one thing and then very quickly pivoted, and I was ready to just completely swap out the CPUs, but I'm glad we looked at the socket because that was where our issue was. And ultimately this fix cost us $0.00. I mean, even if I was doing this as an official service, like for a charge, the fact that I don't have to call the viewer in that case, right, and tell them, hey, I got to replace your $400, $500 CPU. I mean, that's always a preferred outcome, right? So I would have replaced it for him anyway if the chip had been, you know, if the chip was fried. I can get these from Intel rather readily, I think. So I would have just swapped it for him. But still, it is nice to know that it really didn't require all that much effort. I was trying to be very careful with the pins. Again, I'm not sure if this is going to be like a 100% like surefire solution. It's possible that we might have issues with contact in the socket later on, but for now it appears to be running. I've left it on for about 30 minutes and no issues so far. So we're just crossing our fingers, hope it stays like that. Now, if you've enjoyed this season of Fix or Flop so far, be sure to let me know by giving this one a thumbs up. I would greatly appreciate that. If you haven't subscribed yet, smash that red subscribe button and click that notification icon. That's the bell right next to it so you get notified when videos like these go live. We're uploading Fix or Flop episodes at least a couple times a week. We also mix in some PCDC and GCDC stuff. If you don't know what those are, check out our recent playlist here on this channel. I'm also curious to know in the comment section below what you guys would have attacked first given this symptom that you were seeing. The no signal symptom is like a universal one. Like I said, it could be so many different things, right, that's causing that. And I just happened to go after the graphics card first. I figured that was the most obvious thing. Of course, you know, clearing the CMOS and checking DDR4 seeding and stuff aside, I just felt like the graphics card was the next big thing to check. And then shortly after that, I pivoted almost all my attention to the CPU and ended up being CPU related. It just wasn't the chip specifically, it was the socket, but still kind of in the same boat there. So I think I handled this one okay. I didn't really have anything else to go off of. There's no Dr. Debug here. There aren't really any LEDs indicating what's wrong when the system doesn't post, so you kind of just have to play it by ear. Start part swapping. That's really, you know, the gist of it. Starting with the most obvious stuff, the stuff that's easiest to check first, and then working your way down to the more complicated stuff involving the platform, you know, swapping motherboards, swapping CPUs, etc. With that, again, check out our troubleshooting gear in the video description, along with our cleaning gear and other stuff like that. I don't think there's anything else I really want to plug right now. You can check out my social media channels if you want to you know, subscribe. Well, not subscribe to us, but follow me on Twitter, Instagram, follow the channel page on Facebook. That would all be appreciated. We also have a new Shorts channel, and I kind of made note of this somewhere. Where did I make note of it? I think it was... I don't remember. It was another video, I'm pretty sure. But the Shorts channel essentially is just going to be like a 9:16 format, very short videos. What I'm probably going to do is open it up to questions, and I'll dedicate individual videos to questions that I think are valid and that I think many people would appreciate hearing an answer to, and then we'll go from there. So if you have questions that you want me to answer specifically in dedicated videos, be sure to subscribe to our Shorts channel. It's just called Greg Salazar Shorts. and I'll have that linked in the description as well. Thank you so much for watching this far into the video. My name is Greg, and thanks for troubleshooting with me.